Spamandla, we're going to continue with this. I want to bring in our political analyst into the mix, Oliver Dickson, who's been listening in on this conversation. And Oliver, a very good morning to you. I mean, let's speak a little bit about what we can actually anticipate when it comes to this year's January 8th statement. We know that last year's January 8th statement, based primarily in terms of those resolutions by the 54th National Conference of the ANC. So, as it is right now, having to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, it was also around renewing of the ANC. It was also around conversation around land expropriation without compensation. And if we know, many South Africans will be left disappointed in terms of what happened in Parliament regarding even the amendment to that. It will be the issues around skills shortage, youth unemployment, the same old rhetoric. One wonders, though, when are we going to have a progress report and say, actually, good news, South Africans, good news, political party members, this is what we've accomplished so far?
Look, it's a political statement, and so what you'll hear for the most part, Faith, is a political declaration on a number of issues, and ostensibly we hope that he will then address the elephant in the room, which is the state capture report, some of, progress on, corruption in the party. We know this will be the first January 8th statement since Ace Magashule and a number of other ANC members have been forced to step aside. We want to hear progress on what that has done for the integrity of the party. But like I said, it's a political statement, so you'll hear political positions on certain things. So you're right, land expropriation without compensation. What is the position thereon, given that the bill had failed in Parliament? There has to be a conversation between what the position of the ANC is on the energy mix, right? We know that Cyril Ramaphosa has been in talks with G8 countries in terms of weaning South Africa away from coal into clean, renewable energy, something that Gwede Mantashe is vehemently against, right? Give us some clarity in terms of what the party's position is over there. Give us some clarity what the party's position is around, Israel and Palestine is a common feature you would hear when it comes to the international relations issues, what the country's position is to that effect. And so given that there's been rising tension throughout 2021 between Israel and Palestine, we need to hear a declaration on that, right? And this is, and I mentioned that because it's going to be a big issue if they're going to take a moment to commemorate the life of Desmond Tutu, which will be the first occasion at which the party can do so on a grand national scale, right? Given that Desmond Tutu didn't have this elaborate state funeral where the president was able to go and do all of those things. And so this is the moment where they'll have to do that, and they'll have to speak to some of the things that was the legacy of the life of Desmond Tutu. And the conversation on Israel-Palestine is one such thing, right? And then the president will use that as an opportunity to speak about reconciliation in the country, how far that has come. And, there once again will be this fallacious story about how we're a united country, how the ANC is a united party. And you'll hear some lyrical waxing about, the party's work as far as transformation is concerned. You'll hear all of those sort of things. What you will not hear is the party's plan on reconstructing the economy. You'll hear, key phrases, you'll hear some throwaway words here and there, but there won't be a plan with regards to that. They'll pretend like there's a plan, but you won't hear that. The ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa in particular have run out of ideas about how to fix the South African economy. They've run out of ideas about how to tackle joblessness. They've run out of ideas about how to tackle crime and gender-based violence in this country. And so you'll hear those phrases come up, but you will not hear a plan with regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking here about, plans, but not actually having, well, you'll hear a lot about the rhetoric, but not necessarily having plans in that regard. But it's also around the members of the political parties itself, the senior members of the African National Congress. It was interesting to note that even yesterday, of course, we had the likes of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who was present at the gala dinner. Yes, fine, so he's been praised by the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa for the work that he did before stepping down as the health minister. But of course, he's marred by digital vibes, right? The country cannot forget in terms of exactly how even he was implicated at a time when South Africa needed him to lead in a time of a pandemic crisis. We've also got the likes of Ace Magashule, for example, that we understand that was trying to be present in some of the activities. We're seeing Carl Niehaus, for example. He's obviously suspended and the likes. But these are just some of the very loud characters within the political parties that seem now to be almost muted. Is that for the betterment or is that to the detriment of the political party, given the political landscape? Not necessarily to the betterment of the country, but to the betterment of the ANC.
One thing that's indubitably true of this point of the ANC's political history is that the ANC is as strong today as it ever will be and will progressively get weaker. The ANC cannot get stronger than what it currently is in this country, and it's important that we make that recognition. But importantly then, the president will have to address the elephant in the room at the top of the mind of, in particular, ANC members. That is to say, is the ANC under some sort of domestic terrorism attack from within, right? The burning of parliament is something that comes top of mind. The vandalizing of the Constitutional Court, the July unrest, and now an event where the lights go out while the president is speaking, which is not just indicative of the dysfunctional state of our electricity crisis, although we can't necessarily attribute what happened last night to Eskom, but it's symbolic thereof. But what it signaled really for me was a security crisis. I mean, if I'm the president, a week after Parliament got burned down and the Constitutional Court got vandalized and lights go out in a venue with more than 150 people inside of it, immediately there should be panic about whether or not this is once again an attempt on the safety of the state, and this time an attack on the safety of the executive and the head of the executive suffering thereof, right? And so importantly then, that will be the elephant in the room. And the people will ask, is this a display of internal ANC factional battles? And the answer there is it might just be. It is by no accident, for instance, if you go on Twitter and you see who celebrates, for instance, the vandalization of the Constitutional Court and the burning of Parliament, and who sees that anarchism as some sort of political rebuke towards the administration of Cyril Ramaphosa, are necessarily RET sympathizers, right? Are necessarily people like Jacob Zuma's daughter, people like Carl Niehaus sympathizers, and people who have been celebrating the overthrow, or at least have been anticipating the overthrow of Cyril Ramaphosa by the RET faction, presumably led by Ace Magashule. Although it is quite unclear at this stage, and I don't think the political science is settled on what the power base of the ANC looks like with regards to this RET faction. Is it strong? Is it growing? Because, and we've got no data to help us make that assessment. If anything, we have data to make us believe that it may not be as strong as it was before, right? Given that a lot of the RET faction associated members of the ANC have been asked to step aside, have been forced to step aside, and that sort of stuff, right? And so this January 8th statement will be one that has to focus on the internal health of the ANC and not just speak about its political positions on things. Typically, that's what it would be, and only at the NEC meetings and post-NEC meetings do you have statements reflecting on the internal health of the party, or they wait till the NGC or the elective conference to make such a political report. But I think the president, and given that this is an elective conference year for the ANC, has to start having that conversation now. We cannot wait for the political report of the president at the policy and then at the elective conference of the ANC.
Well, let's speak a little bit about some of those life support mechanisms that were holding the ANC together. One such was the conversation around land expropriation without compensation. I'm going to make a quote in terms of what was actually said even last year. It was that the president of the African National Congress saying that this will give effect an important resolution of our 54th National Conference and will contribute to the acceleration of land reform. This needs to take place alongside a comprehensive land reform program that, amongst other things, draws on on long-standing ANC resolutions and the recommendations of the Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform and Agriculture. This is speaking about, obviously, the amendment to Section 25 of the Constitution. Now, we do know that this has not now happened. But is there any way that the ANC can salvage this mishappening? Because at this moment in time, many would say a lot of supporters, a lot of observers of the African National Congress were hoping that the ANC will give them that kind of, future towards land, occupying or having land, having access to the dignity that is associated with land. How much exactly of a kick in the stomach for the African National Congress is this now?
Look, the electoral decline of the ANC has very little to do with policy mishandling and a lot more to do with in the deterioration of its integrity, right? And so what you have here is an integrity crisis. I'm not sure, Faith, if the victory of Section 25, amendment to Section 25 of the Constitution would have restored what is at crisis in the ANC, and that is the integrity of the party, right? And so, look, the ANC has but 1-point-something million members, right? 1-point-something million members is a small percentage of the overall electorate of the country. And so what the ANC has to focus on is not just the happiness of its members, right? And its members are well within their right to raise this, right? But Section 25 amendment is not the only ANC policy that this party would have failed at. Nearly all of the ANC resolutions under Jacob Zuma have been postponed, and President Ramaphosa's administration had to pick that up and has once again been postponed. The ANC is not very well known for implementing its own resolutions in government, right? And that may well be because there's a mismatch between the idealism of ANC resolutions and the capacity of an ANC-led state to be able to implement these resolutions vis-a-vis what works for the country, right? And the ANC needs to ask itself very hard questions. Are our political ambitions still embedded in reality? That is to say, is an amendment of Section 25 embedded in reality? The answer there is yes. But if they ask themselves a question about, a nationalized bank, for instance, or a state bank, for instance, the answer may be slightly different. If they ask themselves a question about the nationalization of mines, which is something that a lot of ANC members who went to this policy conference have been pushing for, the answer may be slightly different, right? And given here that the ANC now has a minister of finance in government that may not have seen eye to eye with the ANC's economic position on many things. Godongwana, for instance, was not shy in the past couple of years to express his view on many of the ANC's economic positions on things, including land expropriation without compensation. And so there's a clear mismatch between the ANC, the party, and the ANC-led government, and what those ambitions and capacities within the party and the state look like in the ability to formulate a program of government that is within the DNA of the ANC at a policy level. But like I said here, it's not a crisis of policy first, it's a crisis of integrity.
We'll leave it there for this morning. Oliver Dickson, thank you very much for your time, a political commentator, giving us the latest there when it comes to what we can expect ahead of that January 8th statement. And of course, our colleagues Pamandla Goge, Buleli Chiti Jones, as well as JJ Tabane are out in Polokwane. Will be giving us more insight as we continue to cross over to them. But